live. All right, so we are live, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And it's so nice today because even though you guys aren't in a classroom, we have over 30 kids joining us from across Ontario, all live on screen, which is so exciting. So welcome into Miss Fellows Group and to some of our other teachers across the province. So nice to have you in. This week is particularly special because this is Oceans Week. So on Monday, June 8th, every single year, it is Oceans Day. So there's calls to action events all around the world in support of our oceans and the creatures that live within them. And we always spend that week doing a huge blitz of programs. So 20 plus events in 1 week, really driving home the importance of our oceans. And this is our last day, of course, of Oceans Week and our first program of the day. And we are joined live in the Florida Keys in Marathon, Florida at the Turtle Hospital. This is the group we've done more presentations with than absolutely anyone. They rescue, rehabilitate, and re-release injured sea turtles, and we are so thrilled to have Teresa joining us to highlight all the amazing work that they do. So let's dive in figuratively, literally, everyone. And without further ado, thanks so much for joining us, Teresa.
Hi, guys. So we're just going to jump on in here. We're going to start with Medea. So she's one of our kind of larger turtles. She's about 200 pounds. And she's a loggerhead sea turtle. Loggerheads are one of the more common species that we get, and they get their name because they have that really, really large head. But they use that big head, they use that very large beak because they're carnivores. They like to eat things that have a hard shell, so things like crab, lobster, and conch, which would be kind of hard for us to eat, but they have that nice, big, strong beak, so it's easier for them. But she's about 200 pounds, which loggerheads will get to be about 400 pounds. So she still has some growing to do. But she came in last year, she was hit by a boat. So she still has some damage to the back end of her shell. So the little white bit back there, that's scar tissue. But at this point, it is considered healed. But unfortunately, she is deemed non-releasable. Because of that boat strike, caused nerve damage, and it also caused her to float. It's what's known as bubble butt syndrome. So cannot release a floating sea turtle because floating in the wild is not normal. And so she now gets to stay here, but to kind of help them out, we attach lead weight to the outside of their shell. So she has some little gray circles on her butt. Those are weights. So that way when she wants to, she can go down to the bottom and go to sleep. So for right now, we're trying to figure out how much weight to put on her. It's not an exact science. There's no formula that you can put it in. It's pretty much trial and error. So we do a lot of Velcro and kind of test out different amounts, different placements until we're happy, she's happy. So for right now, she's just kind of hanging out in one of the smaller tanks so we can kind of keep an eye on her. But then once she's good, and we have those weights figured out, we have a larger, more natural pool for them to kind of hang out in. So for just a little bit longer, she'll just be up here by herself. But that's okay. Sea turtles are used to being by themselves. So the movie Finding Nemo lied. They don't meet their parents. They don't go traveling the currents together. They are solitary in the wild. So used to being by themselves. So she's by herself, but she's not lonely. But one of the cool things about us is that we are on an island. We're surrounded by ocean. And it's actually how we get most of our turtles is from the boaters and the fishermen. So the people that are already out there on the water, they see a turtle that just doesn't look normal. So then they call us. One of our rehab staff is always on call. So that way they get that turtle call, we get in the ambulance, we go pick that turtle up. Or if the boat is close enough, they can come right here into our docks. And of course, it's a really nice, pretty day today. So temperature's supposed to be in the mid-90s, just slightly windy. So kind of perfect boating day. So we might end up getting a turtle in today. We never quite know. They like to keep us on our toes. But this is the big pool where once Medea's weights are figured out, this is where she'll get to hang out, to have lots of other turtle friends. But some more of our patients, we're gonna go with Stitch because Stitch is adorable. So Stitch here, Stitch is one of our little green sea turtles. So the greens are the other common species that we get. And even though they're called green turtles, they're not actually green, but they're primarily herbivores. So in the wild, they eat lots of seagrass and algae. Here they get romaine lettuce, kale, green peppers, cucumbers, all that fun stuff. But they eat so much green stuff that their fat and their insides turn green. So it's kind of like you are what you eat. But Stitch came to us back at the end of February. He was actually a transfer from a little bit further north in Florida. They got in a lot of turtles all at the one time, so they didn't have enough space for everybody. So they transferred them around. But he was just very weak, lethargic, very skinny, so hadn't eaten in a while, but nothing that we could really pinpoint. So he got to come down to us. At this point, he is doing amazingly well, but we still want to keep a close eye on him for at least a few more weeks. Make sure that he really is completely healthy before he gets released. Oh, he's coming up to say hi. And sea turtles, they do have to surface to breathe. They have lungs, they breathe air just like we do. It's just that when they're underwater, they can hold their breath a lot longer than we can. When they're sleeping, they can hold their breath up to about 5 hours. And then when they're actively swimming around, it can be anywhere from a few minutes to an hour. It all depends on what they're doing. Think about you. If you sat in a chair and held your breath, you could probably hold your breath for a minute or two. But try to hold your breath and do jumping jacks. It'd be a lot less. And same things for these turtles. So a lot of the times what they'll do is they'll kind of take a nap and then they'll come up, swim around for a little bit, take a few deep breaths, and then they kind of figure out what they want to do next. If they're still tired, they'll go back down and sleep again. If they're hungry, they'll go around and eat. But they don't have the same set schedules that we do. It's not like sun is up, they're awake, sun goes down, they go to sleep. They just kind of sleep whenever they're tired. They pretty much do whatever they want. It's a really, really rough life being a sea turtle. But let's see, who do we want to do next? We'll go down, we'll do our little guys. So right now it is nesting season. Nesting season is May through October. Typically takes about 50 to 60 days for those eggs to hatch. And then they're supposed to crawl to the ocean, swim offshore. And so we haven't yet gotten any hatchlings from this year. It should be kind of end of June that they start hatching. So soon, but not yet. So we've got these two. This is Ethel and Lucy. These are two from last year. So about 10 and a half, almost 11 months old. These are little baby loggerheads. So when they grow up, they'll look like Medea. But these are what we call our Head Start program, which means that we'll sometimes keep them from hatchlings, give them a chance to get a lot bigger, a lot healthier, a lot stronger, so that way when they get released, they'll have a much better chance of survival. But as you can see, Ethel kind of attacking her toy. They are very feisty little buggers. And that PVC pipe, that is a toy. In the wild, they're used to having rocks and ledges and reefs and obstacles. So here we give them PVC pipe for obstacles. But because loggerheads, they are carnivores, they have that hunter instinct, that kind of feistiness that most carnivores do. They're not typically as laid back as the greens. But these two will be with us for just about another year, because the bigger they can get, the safer they get from predators. Because when they're first born, they're only 2 to 3 inches long, which means everything wants to eat them. But by the time they get released and they're 2, they'll be about 20 pounds. So still on the smaller side, but less likelihood of being eaten. But these are not our smallest. We got a new turtle in yesterday. So our newest little guy, he's hanging out in here. And just around the same age. This is little Gumbo. So kind of give you an idea, he's smaller than my hand. So he's tiny, but he's probably hatched out a little bit later last year. So he's probably only 8 to 10 months old, but he's a little baby hawksbill. So hawksbills we don't see very often. They're a little bit more critically endangered because these are the ones that have that very pretty tortoise shell pattern on their shell. So used to be that anything made out of tortoise shell, like jewelry and glasses, that was all made out of sea turtle shell. But now, because sea turtles are protected under the Endangered Species Act, now that's all illegal. So now that stuff is made out of plastic. So their populations are coming back. It just takes a long time. And so at this point, his shell is still just kind of brown. As he gets older, typically once they hit about a year, year and a half, that kind of tortoise shell pattern starts emerging. But for right now, he's just kind of brown, but that's okay. He does have that very sharp bird-like beak that the hawksbills have. But he was found floating right off of one of our reefs, which is not really where he's supposed to be at this age. He should be offshore, kind of in the floating sargassum seaweed, because that's kind of food and camouflage for them the first few years. So for some reason, he got pushed into the reef, and he's not really injured per se, but he's exhausted. He doesn't have a whole lot of energy because he was probably trying to get back offshore and just couldn't make it. He is a baby after all. So he'll stay with us for a little while. He's getting fluids and some antibiotics. We're just kind of trying to boost him up. But then once he's completely healthy, which we're expecting will take probably about a month or two, then we'll take him offshore and release him. But for right now, all he really does is sleep. But that's okay. That's all he really needs to do is sleep, because he just needs a chance to rest and to heal. They're like us in a lot of ways, that when we get sick, we get weak and tired. We just want to sleep all day. Same thing for them. And then as they start feeling better, that's when they start getting more and more active and start eating better. But it's been less than 24 hours, so we'll give him a little bit of a break and a chance to rest. He's just super cute and adorable. The smallest ones always are. Because they're still cute when they're bigger, but they're just cutest when they're younger. But let's go find some more of our patients. And every year we typically get in about 100 turtles. Currently we have 37 with little Gumbo. So it's kind of about average for us. We've gotten in just about 40 turtles this year. So they like to keep us busy. We've gotten in 3 turtles this week. But we're going to go back up to here because we got Gumbo in yesterday. But then Wednesday, we got in 2. We got in this little guy. This is Dirk. So another green sea turtle, just like Stitch. But Dirk here, he has tumors. So these tumors, those are those little growths all over the neck, the flippers, the eyes. It's something that these green sea turtles get. It's a virus called fibropapilloma. We call it FP for short, but it seems to be linked to water pollution. And those tumors grow on the soft tissues. So the neck, the flippers, the eyes. And it just makes it very hard for these turtles to see and to swim. And if you can't see and you can't swim, you can't eat. And so he does have a bunch on his eyes, so he's kind of mostly blind at this point. But we'll give him a few weeks, let him get a little bit stronger, and then we'll be able to start doing surgery, and we'll be able to remove those tumors. And we actually have a veterinary ophthalmologist that we take them to. So she'll be able to remove the tumors off of his eyes. He'll be able to see. We'll get the tumors off of his flippers. He'll be able to move. And typically these turtles are here about 9 to 12 months, long enough that they build up the antibodies, they build up an immunity to that virus. So that way, by the time that they get released, they won't ever get those tumors again. but he's only been here for 2 days, so he needs some time. Our other turtle that we got in on Wednesday is this guy. This is Mahi. And you might notice that sometimes our turtles have some very unique names. And that's because it's the people that find our turtles that get to name them. It's sort of our way of saying thank you, because they went to the trouble of noticing that turtle and calling us, and even sometimes helping us get that turtle in. So we want to thank them, so they get to name it. So Mahi here was found floating, and so does have an old boat strike wound to the shell, also missing that right rear flipper, but those are both older injuries, so pretty much completely healed at this point. But he's very gassy. We can tell in the x-rays that he's very, very gassy. There doesn't seem to be a blockage in his intestines, but lots of gas, which will sometimes happen when all you do is eat his green stuff. But we're giving him meds, like Gas X, Beano, all that fun stuff to get rid of that gas. He does have a little bit of sunscreen on his shell. That's what that white stuff is. But whenever they have a boat strike, one of the concerns is always bubble butt, like Medea. So we're hopeful that his floating is just because of the intestinal gas, but we have to wait a few weeks to a month, give him a chance to pass all of that gas. And if he stops floating, great, that means he gets to be released. But if even after that gas is all gone, if he's still floating, then that means that it's due to the boat strike and it is bubble butt. But hopefully it's not. Hopefully we will be able to release him. But even though he only has 3 flippers, he will still be able to be released. Think of a 3-legged dog. They may look a little bit different, but still be able to do everything that a normal turtle does. But again, just still very weak and tired. We don't know how long he had been floating, how long he had been sick. So sleeping a lot. Once they start feeling better, that's when they start getting more and more active. Johnny here is one that we're trying to get ready to be released. He's been here since the middle of March, and he came in weak, lethargic, debilitated, super skinny. And when he came in, he was only 72 pounds. Now he's almost 95 pounds. So he's gained 20 pounds in 3 months. And not like us, not because of COVID and because we're stuck at home. In him, it's a good thing. So now he's nice and chunky. We're trying to figure out when and where we want to release him. It'll be sometime over the next couple weeks. And it's just really great being able to watch these guys when they come in and they're just pathetic, and then watch them as they get healthy and finally be able to release them. Okay, let's get some questions.
Fantastic. Well, thank you as always, Teresa, for such a fun presentation. Some really, really cool turtles today. So for all our live groups, I will be coming to you for our Students and Miss Fellows class. Again, let me know in the chat bar, just say, I have a question. I'll come to as many of you as I can. I'm gonna go to Mr. Kilpatrick first in a second, and then on YouTube, if you're joining us, do just let me know where you're joining from, share questions. We've already got a whole bunch there. But Mr. Kilpatrick, if you wanna kick us off with a question, go for it. You should be.
Hey, awesome. Thanks, Jesse. Kind of a two-parter here. How much do they eat in a day, and what is their average lifespan?
Fantastic.
Well, how much they eat, of course, depends on how big they are. Gumbo is going to eat a lot less every day rather than Medea. The amount of food Medea eats every day weighs more than Gumbo. But it typically averages out to about 1% to 3% of their body weight a day. So good chunk of food, especially for the larger guys. And then their average lifespan is about 70 to 100 years. And of course, you can't ever tell exactly how old a turtle is because they don't have growth rings like a tree. So it's just kind of your best guess as to their size, because sea turtles never stop growing. So the older the turtle, the larger they are. So for Johnny here, he's still considered a subadult. He's a teenager. So probably about 12 to 18 years old. Whereas Medea, 200 pounds, is probably right around 30 years old. So even though she is 200 pounds and she is massive, she's still going to get bigger.
Fantastic. Thanks, Teresa. Oh, hi there. Turtle up close and personal. Let's go to Miss Dahl to pass along the question from her class. Miss Dahl, if you want to come up, go for it.
Hi there.
Hi.
I have some questions from my students that they've been feeding me. I have a question from Avery. How many eggs do turtles lay typically at a time? And then from Peyton and Jenna, they're wondering how many species of turtles are there in the world?
Okay, well, each nest has about 100 eggs. So a good chunk of babies every single nest. But it's estimated that only 1 out of 1,000 of those little babies will actually make it to adulthood, because it typically takes them about 20, 25 years to hit adulthood. And a lot can happen in that time, especially when you start off tiny. So that's one of the reasons why we are here, why they are an endangered species, and why we try to help as many as we can. But there are 7 species throughout the entire world. So far you guys have met 3. So the loggerheads and the greens are the most common around Florida. These guys are considered threatened. Then you met Gumbo, the little baby hawksbill. Those are considered critically endangered. And then the other species that we typically find around Florida are the Kemp's Ridleys. Those are also known as the ghost turtles because they're very pale in color, also considered critically endangered. And then the leatherbacks, which are massive. They get to be up to about 2,000 pounds, which means that we don't typically see them down here in the Keys because it's a little bit too shallow for them. But those are also considered critically endangered. So those are the 5 that are found around Florida. The other 2 species are the olive ridleys, which are typically in the Pacific Ocean, and then the Australian flatbacks, which are typically near Australia.
Fantastic. We always get that question. A good one to come in so early. I'm going to take a couple from YouTube, and then I'm going to go to Michelle's iPad and Amelia live in Miss Fellow's class. So fantastic girls. I'm glad you guys have questions. So Emma wants to know, how thick do their shells get, Teresa? Oh, new buddy.
Yeah, this is Coasty. He's one of our non-releasable turtles. He's getting a bath. And so that shell is bone. So it's doesn't typically get more than like a 1/2 inch thick, but then they also have a very outer layer of keratin, so just like your fingernails. So they can feel things on their shell. They have nerves throughout their shell. So think about rubbing your fingernail. That's what they feel. And so Coasty does not really like getting a bath. He's not a big fan, but he kind of doesn't have a choice. He's got to get clean because they have algae that grows on them. And in the wild, they have fish and shrimp that'll help clean the algae off their shells. Here, they have us. And so they get taken out and kind of scrubbed, typically once a month. It does depend on the turtle and how dirty they get. Just like everything else, some of them get dirtier than others. But you'll notice him kind of find that spot where they're scrubbing and kind of rub into it. Just like you have a dog and you scratch them, they have that spot. But then they have other spots that are just like, oh, I don't like that. So they tend to wiggle.
Fantastic. That's awesome. I'll just keep it on the turtle. You don't need to see me when there's a turtle being bathed. That's just the best. So Michelle's iPad, so to speak. I know you have a question in Miss Fellow's class. So if you want to unmute your microphone and let me know what your question is. Yep, there you go.
How old can turtles live?
About 70 to 100 years.
Nice. Thanks, Michelle. All right. And then Amelia, if you want to demute your microphone, perfect. It should give you a chance to do that. And there we go. Hi, Amelia.
Are turtles mammals?
Well, not quite. Sea turtles are reptiles. So they are cold-blooded. They get their body temperature based off of the water temperature. And that's why they like Florida and the Keys so much. But now Coasty's going back in. because they like it where it's warm. Like you won't typically find too many turtles up around Canada. That's why you won't typically find me around Canada. I don't like it cold either. But they also
Hey,
lay
come on.
eggs.
It's
One
like
of the
90 degrees here in Toronto today. Just
One
saying.
of the perks of being
Uh,
working with sea turtles is the fact that I get to go where the turtles are, so I get to go where it's warm. It gets under 70 degrees and I
nice.
get cold. Same thing with the turtles.
Yeah.
So
Just
Coasty's
making a
coming back.
plug. We get warm up here. Teresa, we'll fight this out one day over how wonderful Canada is. Kayla has asked like 10 questions on YouTube. Kayla's super keen. So Kayla wants to know, how many years do you have to go to university to get this job, or just in general? How does someone end up getting this job that you have? It's so cool.
Well, most of us have our Bachelor of Science in something science related. So biology, marine science, environmental science. Trick is something science related. And then of course you have to have a passion for turtles. So most of the time that's a 4-year degree. But of course, depending on exactly what part you want to go into, sometimes you need more. So like our veterinarians are actual veterinarians. Like they went to vet school, they learned all the normal animal, the dog, the cat, and that, but they don't typically teach sea turtles in vet school. So then they just have to specialize once they're out of vet school. So that of course is a lot more schooling. But our rehab staff are kind of the turtle nurses, so they don't need that veterinarian degree. But of course, sometimes they do need that vet tech. And this behemoth, this is our biggest turtle. This is Bowie. She's about 310 pounds.
Wow.
Green sea turtles get to be about 500 pounds. So she's still going to get bigger. But yeah. But she is one of our non-releasables. She's got bubble butt. And she's one that we don't typically get a chance to scrub very often because she does not like being caught. Which it's very hard to make a 300-pound turtle do something that they don't want to do. So she is actually easy to get caught today. So we're going to scrub her really, really good. So that way we can maybe go a little bit longer before her next time. Oop, and Smalls is hanging out. He wants to be next.
Yeah. The bath lineup has begun.
They don't typically line up.
No, that's funny. I just want to say to all our students, like I've hosted 50 of these. I've never had big turtles being bathed live on screen. That's never happened in any of our broadcasts. So lucky you guys. Good timing coming in Roast Week. Bowie looks like it's enjoying it much more.
For the moment.
Yeah. Okay.
I doubt it's going to last.
That's funny. All right, the Lashuk family on YouTube, they want to know, what do the turtles eat on a day-by-day basis?
Well, what they eat depends on what kind of turtle they are. So the greens, like Bowie, she gets lots of green stuff, mainly veggies. She just gets a lot of veggies. We go through a lot of lettuce every day because in the wild, it's typically the seagrass and the algae. Here, it's romaine lettuce, kale, green peppers, cucumbers, occasionally broccoli. Some of them like broccoli, some of them not so much. The loggerheads, the carnivores, they get in the wild crab, lobster, conch. Here they get squid, fish. The little ones also get some shrimp because things without the hard shell, it's a little bit easier for them to digest. And then little Gumbo, he's the little hawksbill baby. They're kind of more carnivores too, but in the wild, they tend to eat a lot of sponges and small crustaceans. They like to live around the reefs when they're older, but he's still a baby, so a little bit more like omnivores. So he's still getting some squid and some shrimp, a little bit of everything.
Nice. All right, I'm going to go to the group that is known as iPad only. You guys have a question? If you want to unmute your microphone, you two guys, just unmute it and we'll take a question from you.
Yeah, apparently the local dude. And yeah.
Hi there, kids. Yep, you're good to go.
Why do turtles have a shell on their back?
Why do turtles have a shell on their back? Very philosophical.
Well, their shell is their protection. So sea turtles don't typically go on the offensive. So they're not going to be mean. They're not going to go after predators, but predators are going to go after them. So they need some way to protect themselves, and they use that shell. And so, of course, there's always something bigger than they are. So when they're smaller, they have to be very, very careful. Once they get to be buoy sized, most things are not going to want to eat her because she's huge. But what they'll do is that when they're getting attacked by a shark, they'll twist and they'll turn. They'll keep their back or their belly to the shark because it is a lot harder for the shark to bite them that way. So think about trying to pinch your hand. You can pinch the side of your hand very easily, but if you try to pinch the palm of your hand, it's a lot more difficult. Same thing with these turtles and these sharks. So that's how they protect themselves.
The best part of this is Amelia trying so hard to pinch her hand. Way to go, Amelia. Good luck. All right. I'll take a couple more on YouTube and then a couple more from our live teachers, Miss Dahl and Mr. Kilpatrick. So I want to pass along. Kayla has a great question. How do you know when you have a sick turtle, Teresa?
Well, when a turtle is sick, it doesn't matter how or why they're sick. If they're sick, that turtle is going to float. And so sometimes it is very clear. Sometimes you can see the tumors, you can see the boat strike, you can see that they're entangled. But like little Gumbo, little guy, he was just found floating, very weak, which is not normal. Typically, the only time turtles are ever on the surface is to breathe. But pretty much as long as they take a breath, they dive down. So most of the boaters down here kind of get used to that normal behavior. So when they come near a turtle and that turtle is just kind of hanging out up at the top and not going anywhere, even when they get right near them, that's not a good sign. So even though they may not know what is wrong, they know something is not right. So then that's when they call us. So even if you're not sure, you call us and say, hey, is this normal? Or do I leave them alone? Or is this not normal and they need to come in? And then between you describing it, sometimes we'll get pictures and video, but somehow we'll figure out what's going on with that turtle and we'll decide, nope, they're fine, leave them alone, or yeah, they need to come in.
Fantastic. Looks like the butt brushing's not Bowie's favorite thing in the world.
Yeah, I told you they all have that spot.
All right, Andy online. He wants to know, and hi, Andy, nice to see you here. Are sea turtles playful and do they bond with the people that are caring for them?
Not quite.
Okay.
So they are reptiles and they are solitary. So they don't have that social bond, not like dolphins and dogs and the rest of the mammals do. So like Bowie at the moment is barely tolerating us. So like I said, they're not mean, but if they happen to stick their hands or anything right in front of her face, she would try to bite them. But as you can tell, we're very careful that we don't do that because we don't want to get bit.
Right. Cool.
But even with each other, because they're not that social animal, they're not going to hang out with each other. So they're going to typically just be by themselves because they are primarily solitary.
Nice. Thanks, Teresa. Look at this. The challenges of moving a 300-pound unwilling turtle.
Luckily, they're already all wet.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Heave. So another job qualification you need for this, people, is like heavy-duty fitness regimen. So get out there, start exercising immediately, and you can get there. All right. I'm going to go to our teachers and then to Clarkster in Miss Fellow's class. So Mr. Kilpatrick, if you want to come up again, go for it and ask us a question.
Hey, great, thanks. And sorry, I should have given a shout out to Taylor and Jiwanjot, who had our first questions. This next one comes from Mahi. He was wondering, how do the turtles know how to return to the same beach each year to nest?
Nice.
And once the hatchlings hatch, how do they know how to locate the ocean?
Well, part of that is the same answer. It's all instinct. So once that mama turtle lays her eggs, that's it. She's done. She never sees those babies again. So from the moment they're born, they're on their own because it's all just kind of hardwired into their brain. And so one of the ways that like sea turtles, it's very hard to teach them anything because their brains aren't built that way because they don't need to learn. They already know everything, like a lot of teenagers. But the way they actually get back to the same beach, we do know it's kind of tapping into the Earth's magnetics. They pretty much have built-in GPS. But we also think that it's chemical cues in the water. But that's something that's still not exactly known. Of course, it would be a lot easier if we could just ask the turtles, but they're not too good about answering questions, especially since we can't tag hatchlings. The hatchlings are too little. So we're getting better, especially with DNA, because now it's a lot easier for us to sequence DNA and we can get different distinct subpopulations. So we know for sure that they do return to the same areas year after year, and especially once they get time to make their own babies. But yeah, the Earth's magnetics and chemical cues.
It's super cool though. I mean, this is something where we have an explanation for it, and yet it's still like black magic. It's super cool. We covered monarch migrations the other day, and the fact that these animals are able to get to home beaches or home areas is just incredible. Oh, sorry. Turtle Hospital team, you guys need to demute your mic again. I accidentally muted you guys. Miss Dahl, if you have a question for us, come on back up.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so Gavin has a question. Do turtles ever lose their shell over time? And my question is, do turtles make good pets for kids?
Well, you can't have a sea turtle as a pet. Sea turtles are protected under the Endangered Species Act. So no to sea turtles. But there are other types of turtles. There are land turtles, like box turtles and tortoises, and then there's freshwater turtles. And in some areas, those are legal to have as pets. In some areas, they're not. But it's one of those things that, yes, they sometimes make good pets, as long as you know what you're getting into. It's not like they're very long-lived animals. Some of the tortoises live over 100 years. Even like the freshwater turtles that are a little bit shorter, they're still going to live close to 50 years. So it is a commitment. So they're not like an animal that you can just realize, oh, it's been 20 years, I don't want to take care of you anymore and let them go. That's not good. So you have to be able to know that you're putting in that commitment to taking care of that turtle for a long time. And also the understanding that some of them get very, very large, which if you're okay with that, great. But otherwise, no. And then what was the first one?
Yeah, sorry, Miss Dahl, I forgot it too. Unmute your mic and come back. There we go.
Yeah, it was a question from one of my students, Gavin, about the shell. Do they ever lose their shell, or is that the shell they have for life?
Yeah, the shell is theirs for life because it is bone. So it'd be like you losing your bones. It wouldn't work out too well. But they can lose bits of their shell. Montel, right there in front. Montel's had everything happen to him. Bit by a shark, entangled in a fishing line, hit by a boat, and tumors. So he's missing a couple flippers. He also has a little notch taken out of the left side of his shell. And that's okay because that shell is bone, so it does heal. It'll just never fully regenerate. So just like with people, sometimes if you get a large enough, deep enough cut, it'll scar, but you'll have like a depression. Same thing with these turtles. So sometimes they'll get nicks and scars, and sometimes even with shark bites, the chunks taken out of the shell. But as long as it doesn't damage anything too much internally, and as long as they are able to heal, they're fine. They'll just look a little bit different, but that's okay. Scars are a part of growing up.
All right, I'm going to go to Clarkster. Oh, sorry, guys. I'm going to go to Clarkster for one more question, as he asked earlier. So Clarkster, come on up, man. You're good to go.
How fast can they swim in the water?
Nice.
Well, they can do bursts of speed up to about 30 miles an hour, but they can't maintain that speed. So it's just for quick bursts, get away from like boats or predators, things like that. But most of the time, they're just going to be going at a slower pace. I like to equate it to us. You can run fast and you can sprint if you absolutely have to, but you're not going around all day, every day running. That would be exhausting. So most of the time, you're just going to be walking.
Well, Teresa, up here in Canada, actually, it's so cold all the time that we just do constantly sprint to keep our body temperature up, just so you know. Great questions, guys. This has been really fantastic. Teresa, before we wrap up, for anyone who wants to learn more about the Turtle Hospital, is there anything we can share about where they can find more information?
Well, you can go ahead and go to our website, which is turtlehospital.org. So we always like to keep our patients updated, especially because they're always coming in, going home, and their progress is changing. So we like to keep that, plus just general turtle knowledge. But then we also have our Facebook page, which we try to do a lot of Facebook Live videos with treatments and surgeries and coming in, sort of things like that. So that way everybody gets an idea of what kind of the day-to-day life at the Turtle Hospital is and what these turtles go through.
Very cool. So I've linked turtlehospital.org into the YouTube chat bar. I'm going to share it with all our teachers as well, so you guys can check that out when you're done and learn more about this just fantastic organization. What we're going to do and what we do at the end of every one of our broadcasts is I'm going to demute everyone's microphone. So all our students in Miss Fellow's class, Miss Dahl, Mr. Kilpatrick, if you guys want to join me in unmuting your microphone and joining me in saying a huge thank you to Teresa and the Turtle Hospital, you should all be demuted. Let's do it. Thank you so much, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
On that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Awesome, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. We so appreciate all you guys joining us. Again, Oceans Week. I've been thrilled to have you guys. Do check out all our videos on YouTube. You can check this out too, so I'll share that when we're done. Great question today, everyone. And Teresa, thank you so much for such a special presentation with some baths thrown in.
Well, it's great to be here. We love teaching people about turtles. Turtles are awesome.
They sure are. All right. We'll check you guys out soon, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye for now, guys.